This is KGW News at 5.
Hello, and first at 5, a warning over the new COVID Omicron variant. The World Health Organization says there's a very high risk it will spread to other parts of the globe. The variant was first reported last week in South Africa. The president is defending his order to block people from coming to the U.S. from South Africa and 7 other countries in the region.
But while we have that, travel restrictions can slow the speed of Omicron, it cannot prevent it. But here's what it does. It gives us time. It gives us time to take more actions, to move quicker, to make sure people understand you have to get your vaccine.
The Omicron variant has been detected in Canada and Europe since it was first reported in Africa. And researchers here in Oregon are already looking for it. Pat Doris reports.
The new variant is not yet known to be in the United States, but 2 cases in Canada were reported late Sunday. It's unusual and different from the others because it has at least 30 mutations, including many on that spike protein that it uses to enter our cells. Dr. William Messer is a researcher at Oregon Health and Sciences University and deeply involved in tracking the virus.
Now I think we should be vigilant. I think we should do what we know works, which is vaccination, distancing inside, mask wearing, particularly in high-risk settings, remains to a practice that works for all the variants.
Omicron was first reported in South Africa, but cases now also exist in Europe and Asia and Australia. It's unclear how fast it spreads or how effective our current vaccines are against it. But everyone, from President Biden to Dr. Messer, say those vaccines are still your best bet for protection.
Vaccination remains far and away the most likely to be helpful way to protect yourself against this variant.
The tale of how this variant got its name is interesting. Last May, the World Health Organization decided to start naming variants after letters in the Greek alphabet to take away the stigma from countries where they were first discovered, the UK variant, for example. This current variant is the 13th of interest or concern that gets a letter. So going down the list, the 13th letter is pronounced new, but the WHO skipped that because it sounds too much like, new, as in the first time we've seen it, which they kind of thought was confusing. And the next letter, Xi, is a common last name for a lot of people around the world. So on to the 15th letter, said WHO, which is how we got Omicron. Back to our area, OHSU is gearing up its lab to catch any samples that might pass through.
Yes, we are. I was actually just got off our call 5 minutes before talking to you, where we were discussing strategies for this. So there are a couple of.
Dr. Messer said it will be relatively easy to spot because when run through a standard PCR test, Omicron causes an unusual reaction, the same way the UK variant did. Sorry, England. The lab can test about 1,000 samples a week, so if or when Omicron arrives, we should know it relatively quickly. And with some of these past incidents, I remember thinking, wow, that sounds a little bit scary. I hope it doesn't end up here. And then, it always ends up here. Is it just a matter of time, you think, before this variant ends up in Oregon?
Yeah, it is. I think we do a lot of predicting the future based on past experience. And like you said, every other variant has made it here over time. And I think it's highly likely that this variant will make it here as well.
Pat Doris.
And now to Oregon's rent assistance backlog. It's been a steady headline throughout the pandemic for good reason. But our team on the story found there has been some major progress. Maggie Vespa joins us with more on that. Maggie?
Yeah, this is good news, definitely. Officials say Oregon is now 8th in the country for doling out federal rent assistance. It's a big shift. Remember, back in August, we reported of the $200 million officials had on hand, Oregon had only given out about $11 million of that. Well, tonight, the state's live dashboard shows Oregon has doled out now close to $150 million, up from $11 million in August. The number just to the right of that also kind of pulled out $28.3 million. That's the amount of money the state has promised to pay people, but just physically hasn't gotten them the check yet. Musunda Mwango falls into that second category. Our Art Edwards spoke to him over the weekend. Mwango, a father of 3, worked in a church and lost that job when the pandemic shut down churches. The state approved his application for rent assistance in June, but here's the update.
You haven't seen a dime?
I haven't seen a dime, no. My landlord has not received anything. And it's just, I've had to find other ways to probably just try and catch up. with everything, but that it's been a little scary sometimes.
Of course it has. And officials say they know a lot of people are in Wongo's position. So starting on this Wednesday, they are actually pausing this process for 6 weeks to catch up even more. So if you're behind on rent but haven't applied, officials say do that now. Go to OregonRentalAssistance.org. We'll have more at 6 coming up on the story.
Boy, such an important story that affects so many people. So thank you,
Good to see
Maggie.
progress, but good to get this info out too.
We'll see you at 6 o'clock.
Sure.
A warning from St. Helens Police tonight. Anyone who parks outside should make sure their car is locked. Since early Sunday morning, police have taken more than a dozen reports of car break-ins across 5 different neighborhoods. Even worse, 2 cars were stolen. Authorities say all of these cars were unlocked. We spoke to a man who walked out to his car Sunday to see that the glove box had been ransacked. His girlfriend's wallet was stolen. He says whoever's responsible then used the garage door opener to get inside his garage.
Well, it's one door, and then you're standing in my kitchen, and that's my kids and I are asleep upstairs. I mean, it's the word, you feel attacked. You feel victimized.
Police urge anyone with information to contact them. In the meantime, they say you can often avoid being the victim of car prowlers by locking car doors and parking in well-lit areas. A researcher studying the changes happening in the ocean off the Oregon coast calls what he has seen unprecedented, a mass die-off of species critical to our ocean and our fisheries. Now, an underwater mission to find out what's happening is underway. Keely Chalmers explains.
It began back in 2013, a record-breaking marine heat wave. It became known as the warm blob, unusually warm water off Oregon's coast that changed what kind of fish swam in our coastal waters. And then came the dead zones, large areas of the ocean floor where sea life suffocated due to lack of oxygen. The result, a massive decline of some pretty important species.
So it's an unusual cascade of ecological events that have come together all at once and really unprecedented along the Oregon coast in recorded history.
Steve Rumrill is the shellfish program leader at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. He's been studying what he calls a very disturbing trend.
So they really have virtually disappeared.
Rumrill is referring to these sunflower sea stars. They and other important marine species like abalone have been declining dramatically.
The sea stars in particular that we're concerned about are the multi-armed sunflower sea stars, and they've experienced about 90% of the population has disappeared.
Also declining bull kelp, which is essential for the survival of a number of ocean species. At the same time, the purple sea urchin population has been rising rapidly.
We've had a very unusual increase in the number of purple sea urchins. Purple sea urchins are grazers, so they graze seaweed and bull kelp, and that has contributed to the decline of the kelp.
To find out what is going on, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Marine Resources Program was recently awarded a $250,000 grant to get out into those waters.
That may be indicative of changes in our nearshore ocean climate, which could be coupled to climate change.
The grant money will fund scuba divers to conduct underwater surveys, as well as unmanned submarines like this to monitor the changes in our near-coast waters. Because while there are still a lot of unknowns, one thing is for certain: our ocean is changing, and researchers will be exploring it more and more to find out why. Keely Chalmers, KGW News.